I'm Sue, registered dietitian with Wilmot Cancer Institute and the Pluta Integrative Oncology and Wellness Center. We recognize when you transition to a plant-based diet, you need to do a lot of dicing and chopping to get all of those healthy fruits and vegetables into your diet. And that's one of the common questions we always get from patients. How do I just prepare the produce? So we've developed this class in collaboration with a chef, and it's become one of our most popular classes. So we've decided to go ahead and record the class so you can watch this in the convenience of your own home, and you can practice dicing and chopping your fruits and vegetables. I'm pleased to introduce Chris Januzzi, an instructor from MCC Hospitality Program, who's going to be running our knife skills class.
I'm here to talk to you today about some knife skills, cutting techniques, how to properly care for your knives, and how to work efficiently in an organized manner. First thing I want to touch on was the knives. Under the link for this video on the website, there's a link to handouts that kind of goes more in depth, talking about knives and knife cares and different cutting techniques. So this is a chef's knife or a French knife. This is, if you only have two knives, these are the ones you want. You know, maybe have a serrated knife for cutting bread. But this will be your kind of main tool. This will be for kind of smaller work. And then also a steel is super important as far as knife care is involved. Just kind of hones the blade. What happens is after a lot of work, the tip of the blade kind of goes right or left, and this instrument doesn't actually sharpen it. It just brings the tip of the knife back to what's called true. And there's a couple techniques for doing this. This is a little bit safer. Just kind of touch it down, and you're just at a 15-degree angle, kind of realigning that blade. Same technique for the paring knife. And you have this little guard here. If you're not used to doing it, I like to recommend to students at MCC, just grab kind of like a little side towel and hold it like that. If you do slip, you're going to hit the towel instead of your flesh, which is never a good time. But these are the tools that are really important. You don't have to go out and buy a whole set of knives. It's really just kind of, these are the key components. A good cutting board is really important. I like these plastic ones. These are nice. They have the nice slip resistant on the side to keep it from moving around on you. Very good for safety. And they're easy to clean, easy to sanitize as opposed to wood or some people use glass, but that's really damaging to your knives. So try and look for something like this. This is a nice color too because they have a tendency to get stained. And then as far as organization is involved, I usually, if I'm at work or cooking at home, I like to have different receptacles set up in front of my cutting board. So one for refuse, carrot peels, onion peels, things of that nature. Anything that's either going to go in your compost or trash. Have something really available so you're not always turning and looking for a garbage to put stuff in. Just you want to have everything right in front of you, and then little receptacles to actually like put your cut mise en place in, which is a culinary term, but I'll kind of go over that with you more as we move along. So I'm going to start off with carrot, easy technique for peeling. I like to kind of rest it on the cutting board, and then you're just rotating it. A good peeler is always a good thing to have. And again, I'm working, kind of pushing everything to my right because I'm right-handed. I would usually have everything set up over here. You want to have a nice, comfortable stance. A lot of people kind of get get the shoulders crunched up and, you know, get really tense in the neck area. You want to kind of stay present in the moment, stay relaxed, you know, bend the knees a little bit. If you're going to be doing a lot of food, just make sure you're comfortable and you're not all tensed up. So pushing your right. I'm going to start with Julienne, and this is a French-style Julienne. So after you peel a carrot, just break it down to manageable sizes. These are kind of smaller carrots, so I cut it in half, and then I'll do a quick cut, and that'll give you a nice flat base to work with so you're not sliding all over the place. And then you just kind of go and make nice little sheets, basically. And depending on what you're doing, if you're doing you know, something that's a quick saute, you basically just kind of lay them out. And then for Julienne purposes, you can do your little flat, semi-curved pieces by themselves. And then your pieces that are kind of flat all the way, you kind of stack them up a little bit. And then you have nice little sticks, Julienne pieces, and from there you can go into a small dice if you just rotate it. And this is, like I said, this is kind of more a French technique. I'm going to do a real quick demo on this other piece to show you kind of more Asian technique. So I just kind of scrape these in a little container here. And I always kind of use the edge of my knife as like a little scoop. Just be careful when you're doing that. And when you are pushing, you know, kind of ingredients to the side, I like to kind of keep it angled, never like dragging it like this, because that'll, again, then you got to hone your blade. So always keeping your knife sharp. So this will be the Asian technique for Julienne, and this is really good in stir fries. Just do really quick. So this is called cutting on the bias. And then you kind of fan it out, lay them flat, and then you're going super thin on this one. And this is, you know, if you're cooking stuff that takes seconds, like a stir fry, and you can just fly through this. You get nice little skinny cuts, and then, like I said, you got your little scraps here. If you want to save the little bits like this for stock or salad or whatever, or to nibble on, I don't like to throw much out. I don't save the peels for much, but so those are your two carrot cuts, one that was Julienne, and then we brought down to a dice. And then this, you could even take it down further if you rotated it again, and you could bring it down to a really fine mince. Scoot our little scraps aside. So next I'm going to do, another thing, I usually like to have nice little side towels or tea towels. Really close by for, you know, wiping up your cutting board or wiping your hands. So peppers, most efficient way that I like to do peppers, top off, and you're cutting through the stem, bottom off, and then I'll come right in here and just kind of follow the internal around, getting those ribs so that you just have all meat. I'm going to discard the center with the ribs. And then this is all usable product. So I'll usually, for Julienne on these, just kind of start, and you got your little grip, your thumb's kind of your base, and then you got, if anybody's ever seen the Addams Family, it looks like a thing, and your thumb's kind of pushing, feeding the ingredient into the rest of your fingers. And you get this kind of rocking motion, feeding the ingredient in, pulling your fingers back, keeping that wall, keeping your fingers protected. You're not like this. You know, you want that kind of middle finger to be your guide, so you're not doing any damage. These, if you want to go quick, you can stack them. Usually just kind of push them down, and then now you're lifting the blade up, but I'm still using that middle finger as a guide. Or if it makes you feel more comfortable, just keep the blade down and using that rocking motion. And then from here you can, rotate it, do a dice if you wish. These, the top and the bottom, I usually just kind of, you can dice them easily enough, but they're not as uniform. So if you're looking for uniform cuts, I usually use the center part of the peppers. So we'll save some like this. And then I'll just do a quick dice. Same thing as the carrots. You're just trying to line everything up and then going into a small dice. Obviously, if you want larger dices, you can, just don't julienne them as thin. So next I'll do garlic. Garlic's one that, some people complain about. It's kind of harder to work with, especially to peel. For some people, they can be kind of tricky. I usually just kind of like to take my little discard thing and just give it a little crack, get the paper off on the outside so you're not getting a bunch of garlic paper into your mise en place. That's a term I keep using because I work in a culinary school. Mise en place just means put in place. It's just talking about everything you need to prepare your meal, from ingredients to, your knife or your receptacles or what have you. So then, at this point, you're down to your individual cloves, and I'll usually just either take the base of my hand, give it a little crack, and then I'll roll it in my hands. It usually softens the paper up and it'll just pop right off. You can also take your chef's knife and just give it a little pop. This one's kind of flat, but it usually still pops the paper right off. Fresh garlic is really hard to peel. I can tell this is fresh. You can also always just take your paring knife. That's what this is good for. Little jobs like this, where if you have little bits of paper, you just take it right off. Make sure you have a nice clean cutting board. And then for this, we're just going to do a mince. So there is the center that I usually like to check, and with fresh garlic, you don't have to worry about it. I don't know if you can see that. There's really nothing in the center. The longer the garlic sits around for, it starts to germinate. There'll be a little green germ in there where it's actually starting to grow, and that can be really bitter if it's left in there. So I usually cut it in half where the germ would be, and then if that's in there, pop it out. And then again, using your rocking motion, working left to right. Make sure you take that little tip off. Checking for a germ again. Nothing. This does have a little brown spot though, so I'm just going to cut that out. And then just glide through that. And then I like to make a little pile. And then you're basically just running your knife through it to try and make them all even-sized pieces. You don't want any big chunks with little chunks in there, otherwise the little chunks are going to burn. Just clean your blade off a couple times. Just keep running your knife through it. There's your mince. I usually clean my hand off with the back of the knife. Two different techniques on how to cut an onion. So onion's another one that a lot of people have trouble with for a lot of reasons. You know, they're slippery, they're hard to peel. So peeling technique, first technique, take your paring knife. I usually like to cut the root end off. This is where the roots actually grow out of the onion. This is if you want to do sliced onions for sandwiches or whatever, and I'll just kind of go around the root end. Just pulling that top layer off. That top layer of the onions, once they cure, they get this papery covering that keeps them protected. Onions usually last a long time. So you have all onion there, and then you just kind of take your paring knife, take the top of that off. You still have a bit of the root end, which leaves it connected. And then you can do your onion slices if you want for burger or veggie burger or any sandwich you want. Just nice round circles there. This is also a good technique for doing a dice onion. So now I go right through that root end, right in the center, and I'll kind of keep that on there if I'm going to do dice. There's a couple techniques to do dice. So I usually like to have a nice flat end with a little bit of that root end, which will hang on. And then you just kind of partially go through. And this is, everything is good to have a nice sharp knife, but onions especially. So you kind of have that, rainbow section. You're kind of imagine cutting through the rainbow, and then you're cutting through that again. So you're kind of making a little crosshatch because you get all little knobby parts in there. And then you go into your dice, just kind of using your hand again as like little pinchers to keep that together. And then there's your dice for your salsa or whatever you're making, and then you have this little knobby end that you can kind of bring this down and dice that up all the way so you don't have much waste. Pushing that in your little pile. Second one, kind of the same thing. You have your half an onion. You can go and kind of take that little root end out. And then you're basically cutting along with the grain or with the rainbow. You're basically cutting a bunch of little rainbows, if you want to look at it that way. And then you kind of follow the curve. So now my knife is straight. Now I'm kind of changing the angle a little bit. And then I usually tip it down. And then these last couple cuts, and then keeping your finger as a claw and just working down to the last bit. I'm just going to keep this right here. Show you really quick. So the quick way to peel onions, bottom, top. This is if you don't, basically any way unless you want these little circles. This is the quick way to cut an onion. So cut the bottom off, the root end, cut the top off, and then you just peel your onion this way. And sometimes they're very similar to garlic. If they are fresh, the paper's kind of not quick to come off. I usually just grab my paring knife and then take it off that way, and it'll usually pop right off. Discard any little brown bits.
Thank you for viewing our video on knife skills. We hope you've learned some new techniques for slicing and dicing produce. Thank you to Chef Chris Januzzi for donating his time, and we hope you put your skills into action by preparing healthy recipes at home.